Number 1. Arne Cheyenne Johnson. The 1980 possession of Connecticut resident Arne Cheyenne Johnson is one of the most notable in American history due to the fact that it was the very first court case wherein the defense tried to use demonic possession as a means of acquittal rather than the usual mental illness. Known as the Demon Murder Trial, the story began with the possession of a young boy Johnson was living with at the time, which apparently hopped from one host to the next. 11-year-old David Gladstell was the first host of the demonic entity, which wreaked havoc on life in the Gladstell family home. The boy experienced strange rashes and bruises on his body and alleged that he saw a strange old man on the property, who sometimes took the form of a beast-like creature. Deep gashes began to appear on the front door of the house, seemingly confirming David's claims of paranormal activity. Eventually, renowned demonologists Ed and Lorraine Warren, who were seen in The Conjuring, were brought in to expel the demon, working with a Catholic priest who used the power of Christ to cast the evil out of the young boy. But that was only the beginning of this tale, as the entity apparently jumped from David's body to Arne Johnson's in the wake of the exorcism. On February 16th of 1981, Johnson brutally murdered the Gladstell's family landlord, stabbing him repeatedly with a pocket knife while growling like an animal. Johnson was convicted of the murder, though he only served a mere 5 years in prison. Number 2. Latoya Ammons. One of the most recent stories of demonic possession came out of Indiana earlier this year. Back in January, news began to make its way around the net about the possession of the Ammons family, with mother Latoya claiming that both she and her 3 children were being terrorized by an angry demonic entity. Strange voices, mysterious wet footprints, and levitation were among the symptoms of this particular possession, and the story gained a lot of credibility when both nurses and police officers confirmed the claims Latoya was making. Medical staff at the local hospital reported that one of the boys had been lifted off the ground and tossed into a wall by an unseen force, proceeding to walk backwards up the wall in a way that was described as being very inhuman. Ghost Adventures star Zach Baggins purchased the home shortly after the news broke and is planning on living there and documenting his experience. The story is also being turned into a feature film by one of the producers of The Conjuring. Number 3. Julia. This tale is about a girl who is simply referred to by the name Julia, who at the present time is, according to reports, still the host for an entity that's ripped straight out of a horror film. According to a doctor's report released to the public in 2012, the mysterious Julia, identified as a middle-aged Caucasian woman from the United States, speaks in voices that are quite different than her own and even displays psychic abilities, exhibiting a knowledge of events that she, by all means, should have no knowledge of. So those cats really went berserk last night, didn't they? She chillingly asked, mere hours after a violent catfight in the private home of a member of her psychiatry team. An exorcism was eventually performed on Julia, with the priest noting that the room grew very hot as soon as they began. During the exorcism, Julia levitated off the bed for a full 30 minutes and again spoke in languages she had never learned, recoiling in agony any time holy water was sprinkled onto her body. The possession began back in 2008, and though the exorcism was helpful, Julia is reportedly still to this day battling the malevolent force that resides within her. Number 4. Janet Hodgson. Britain's most famous poltergeist case occurred between 1977 and 1978. It affected the Hodgson family and appeared to center on the person of Janet Hodgson, who was then 11 years old. The sequence of strange incidents began when Janet and her brother complained that their beds were moving. Their mother didn't believe them until she saw a chest of the drawers slide across the room on its own. From then on, bizarre happenings became routine in the Hodgson household. Objects would move around on their own, and even the people in the house sometimes found themselves thrown around or levitated into the air. This was to become one of the most public hauntings in history. The Hodgsons contacted the media about what was happening to them. Journalists, photographers, and paranormal researchers soon arrived and spent considerable time with the family. They themselves witnessed the same weird occurrences and recorded them on their camera equipment. However, much of the equipment had trouble functioning in the strange environment of the Hodgsons' house. Some fascinating images were captured though. There are photographs of Janet Hodgson being flung through the air as well as objects floating around on their own. It seemed that whatever entity was responsible for the disturbances in the house was sentient in some form. The people in the house found they could communicate with it verbally, and it would respond by making rapping sounds to indicate yes or no. At times, it even spoke through Janet's body in a harsh, rasping masculine voice. It said its name was Bill, and that it had lived in the house for 50 years. Because of its very public nature, and because journalists, photographers, and researchers were all invited to come and witness the phenomenon for themselves, the case of the Enfield poltergeist remains one of the most compelling paranormal incidents in history. Thanks guys, please share, comment, and subscribe for more videos. And remember, never forget to lock your doors.